Hello and welcome. I'm Emma Kail, Executive Director of the Grand Teton Music Festival, and I'm so happy to welcome you to this announcement of our 2022 festival season. You all are here today because you are one of our nearest and dearest here at GTMF, our subscribers and our donors. So before we get started, let me first say thank you for your unwavering support and enthusiasm for world-class music in Jackson Hole. We had a remarkable season last summer. Even with reduced capacities in Walk Festival Hall, we saw a 25% increase in subscribers over the previous best-selling season. So what did this tell us? It told us that the exhilarating and intimate music that we bring to this valley has never been needed more in our lives than right now. So this summer, we're presenting an expanded 8-week festival. As always, we'll be introducing you to artists and composers that are new to you, right alongside returning favorites. And of course, the crown jewel of our organization, the Festival Orchestra led by our very own Sir Donald Runnicles. Our maestro and a few special guests will be with us today, including pianist Garrick Ohlsson, soprano Heidi Stober, and Festival Orchestra and Los Angeles Philharmonic Principal Trumpet Tom Hooten. Of course, everyone's by Zoom, but starting off, one of our guests is not quite as far away from me as we originally expected when we first planned this preview. Joining us today, not from Berlin, but from his home outside of Wilson, Wyoming, our music director, Donald Runnicles.
Good morning.
Hi,
neighbor.
Good to see you.
Good morning, Emma.
So week one, it's quite a feat at any point in time. Have you ever programmed all 5 Beethoven concertos on one weekend?
No. I was really rather astonished when, we had intended doing this 2 years ago. Garrick is just this, in the best sense of the word, a monster at the piano. And of course, he started with Rachmaninoff, came back with Mozart. And I've always had this dream with Garrick of doing this. And he said yes. And of course, it's featuring all of the 5 concerti, I think gives everybody, the audience, the orchestra, this unique insight in hearing just these concerti together. And with that in mind, and just wondering how Garrick approaches this, I did actually speak to him recently, and this is what we talked about. Garrick, good morning, and greetings to the west coast of the United States of America.
Thank you, and greetings to the mountain region of the United States of America.
Well, thank you. Garrick, we're obviously thrilled to be making music, or I'm thrilled, but the audience is thrilled to welcome you back to the Grand Teton Music Festival in 2022. Of course, we started with something of a splash a few years ago with that rather remarkable Saving the Show, the Rachmaninoff 3. You've subsequently been with us with Mozart, and now taking on something, well, many would consider probably the most epic of challenges, doing all the Beethoven concerti over 2 concerts. I have so many questions. I suppose my first question in talking with you about this, first of all, we're utterly thrilled that you will be with us. How do you choose where to put which concerto? In this case, we have in the first concert 2, 1, and then 4. In the second concert, we have 3 and 5. I'd be interested to know, and obviously, this is your wish. What are the criterion there?
There are several, including very pragmatic ones, which is the length of the works involved. Because we don't want to, for example, one could do 3, 4, and 5 as a single concert, but then it's about the length of a symphony concert and a half. So just too much. So that was part of the decision. And then I thought, since the 2 absolutely most popular ones are numbers 4 and 5, those are the, if you will, hits of the whole group, although they're all hits for me. I thought we shouldn't have the two most popular pieces on the same program either. So it was just rather pragmatic. I guess 2 and 1 go and we're just being a little bit didactic and going back to Beethoven's original ordering, because he wrote the so-called second concerto before the first, but it was published second, so it got called number 2, which program notes always tell us, and there it is. So, but hearing things in order with Beethoven is enlightening, but also hearing things out of order. So that was kind of a mishmash, because when you only have, if you're going to accept the premise of 2 concerts for the 5 pieces, you've got to make a decision at some point, don't you?
Absolutely. Obviously, you have an intimate knowledge with these pieces over many, many decades. And when I think of the symphonies of Anton Bruckner, Ludwig van Beethoven, Gustav Mahler, there's very much a sense from Symphony 1 to Symphony 9 or Symphony 10 of a genuine development. That composer just distilling, just perfecting the craft. And even though the 2 and 1 are not quite in the right sequence, as a pianist and as this master interpreter of these works, do you feel very much even as I call them a kind of veritable mountain range, all these 5 concerti, that they all stand alone so wonderfully? Do you sense a development through all 5 concerti?
Absolutely, on any number of levels, pianistically, musically, even in terms of historical development, because, as is often said, Beethoven changed the course of, well, classical music or European music or whatever you want to call it. And he developed it. It was a language, it was an art form that was developing fast before he was born, and he pushed it and perhaps developed it faster. In other words, he stretched the limits, including of size and scale, and later of even orchestration a little bit. In the more classical time, with one brilliant but naughty exception of Mozart, the 271, which we've done in Jackson Hole, in any concerto or any aria from Bach's time on, the orchestra gives you some material and then the solo voice enters, or the instrument or the singer or the wind or string player. And it's always a point of interest, as Tovey points out, to see what's the soloist going to do. Is he going to reiterate the same material or say something different or vary it? And with Beethoven, for the first 3 concertos, he does exactly that. The pianist listens to the opening tutti, which presents most of the material of the first movement, and then comments on it with unrelated, well, for the first 2 concertos, unrelated material, and with the 3rd concerto, a Beethovenian angry version of the very opening bars of the quiet orchestra opening. But when it comes to the 4th, the favorite moment to talk about, the piano plays 5 bars of the first theme, and then the orchestra answers in a distant key. And to the sophisticated listeners in Vienna, where he premiered this, and they indeed were sophisticated, some of them were his students, his pupils, probably like the Archduke Rudolph, for those who were very well trained and versed in music, mostly the aristocracy that he worked with, this would have been a great shock, because first of all, what's the piano doing, almost improvising a bit, and then getting the answer in the wrong key from the orchestra, and in those days that would have been really quite a visceral shock. Whereas, of course, we've had 100 years of music history since the Rite of Spring, so we're no longer so terribly shocked by such things. And in the 5th concerto, as the orchestra is getting more powerful and pianos are getting more powerful, Beethoven always embraced every new development in the piano, because it was an instrument that was being developed during his lifetime. And so in the 5th concerto, he decides the piano is the equal of the orchestra, and the orchestra plays 1 chord and the piano takes off in a flourish, as if to say, don't bother with them, I'm in control here. And at the climax of the development section of the Emperor, there's actually a fight where the orchestra goes bum ba dum, and the piano crashes back bum ba dum. And probably never before in music history had a piano had enough strength to possibly answer all the sound of an orchestra. So it became a kind of a dialectic, and they sort of have a little musical tussle for a while, which then ends peacefully. And because the Fifth Concerto is mostly a very joyous piece. So Beethoven was constantly experimenting with the forms and with the pianism. The pianism of the first two concertos is a little bit beyond what Mozart would have done, but Mozart could have played it if he ever knew them. You know, it would have fit the Mozartian range of Mozart's forte pianos in terms of what you could do. By the third, it's getting a little bit more aggressive, and in the fourth and fifth, even more so. And in the fifth, you probably have the first almost modern proto-romantic concerto with the piano actually using sound and noise and technical things to make color and so on. So yes, there's a tremendous development within it. And I'd like to add just one thing to that, which is, you know, with the symphonies, as you say, of Mahler or Beethoven or Bruckner, there is a sort of steady line of development. Well, by the time Beethoven wrote the Fifth Concerto, he was going very deaf and was not appearing as a virtuoso pianist, which was one of his big roles in life. And so maybe because it wasn't for him to play, or maybe because they didn't commission pieces so much for other people to play than the composer, that he didn't continue. It would be nice to know what he would have done had he written, you know, piano concertos in his late period. What would a piano concerto written alongside the Ninth Symphony sound like?
I should imagine it would have been an epic bun fight. I mean, I'm really looking forward to picking many fights during these concerti. I'm just kidding, Garrick, but actually, I can't believe I'm only asking this question after not only having worked with you for so many years, but also other pianists. It would interest me because you brought this up, that just the classical form of the concerto was that there was this exposition, and quite literally the orchestra exposes all the themes which will probably serve as the framework for the work. Besides just waiting for your entry in a work, what is, and of course the audience is observing different pianists in front of the orchestra, some are very still, others are physically drawn, so to speak, or rolling with the music. I suppose two questions. What is going through your mind? And secondly, however much we or you with the conductor, with an orchestra, you have rehearsed something, are there situations where suddenly at that concert, for whatever reason, it's a slightly different exposition before you come in? Can that have an influence on what you're about to play?
Oh, I think so. Yes, I mean, I think as a work of music, it certainly fits in, but I think the soloist in a Beethoven concerto or a Mozart concerto or any needs to listen to what's going on and be part of it, react to it, react sort of contrary. You know, in the first concerto, after the lovely tutti finishes with a flourish, you know, how are you going to, it's like an actor, how are you going to say that line among the hopefully numerous variable possibilities that are legitimate? You know, I'm not going to come in fortissimo in the first concerto because that would be iconoclastic or just stupid. But just the mood of it and the way the orchestra has set it up. Also, there's a question of tempo, because it's possible, even with a superb orchestra and conductor like I will have in Jackson Hole, and I'm saying that not to be complimentary, but just true.
Much appreciated.
You know, we all have our deep musical relationships with Beethoven built over a lifetime. And even if we agree on tempo and character, on a particular day, you might set it up just a hair slower or a hair faster than I might like to play. I mean, this is the very nuts and bolts of playing with colleagues. And, you know, then I sort of have to think, well, what do I do? because I think it's extremely bad manners, although I've heard distinguished soloists do it sometimes, to come in at the tempo they want. like
I like Glenn Gould.
Sort of, yes. Like, well, enough of that. They're done now. Now let's do it the way I think it should be, because I think these are cooperative pieces. But that won't happen. But nevertheless, it's more subtle. It's more the mood of the moment, and perhaps I might feel the whole thing should be a little bit lively. So I might be let's say that happened. I might be plotting. Well, I won't come in more lively, but I'll sort of see how the next few phrases can shape. So I'm sort of thinking ahead, but much more on the pragmatic level. When I was a kid, I was nervous during these tutties because they're long, and I'm usually making a debut and want to make a good impression and hope everybody will like me. The orchestra, the conductor, the manager, the critics, the audience. So, you're often quite nervous. And I remembered when I was about 20, I spoke to Vladimir Ashkenazy about that, because the third concerto has the longest opening tutti. Maybe it's 3 minutes, but it's a long time for a young person to sit there being nervous about doing well. And he just said, if you're really quite nervous, he said, sing the bass line, not loud enough to be heard, but just put yourself into the music so you're involved in something besides your own ego. And I thought, good advice. Brilliant advice from a colleague who was at that point, well, he's not that much my senior. He's only about 12 years older than me, but in those days we were all young. But I thought, wow, he's a genius. He knows what to do. And it's a marvelous thing too, because if you're just feeling any discomfort or any worries, you're making your debut in London or Berlin or something, you're thinking, okay, this is bigger than me. Let's join the totality rather than just, how well will I make, which mistakes will I make in my opening statement?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think one thing is
I'm being a little silly.
Certain. Well, I think one thing that's absolutely certain, Garrick, I will not be listening out for any bass lines emanating from behind me.
No, one would of course not sing them audibly. It's just to take your focus off. Off.
Yes, I think you're far more likely to hear groans from me.
Conductors do sometimes. You're so musical.
Well, yeah, but it probably doesn't come across that way. Well, Garrick, it is worth mentioning again that to have you back in any work, in any form, is a great privilege. To have you back,
thank you,
performing all 5 of the concerti over 2 concerts is not just a tribute to you, to your stamina, to the marathon-like nature of this, but also the fact that you would come and do that with the Grand Teton Music Festival Orchestra, with the audience. I know that it's one of the highlights of our season, and I cannot wait to see you, cannot wait to continue these kind of conversations. I could speak to you for hours. I learn so much every time I talk with you, but we're all extremely excited to welcome you back in the summer.
That's always mutual, and what I said before was not a compliment. The orchestra at the Grand Teton Music Festival is made up of some of the most superb players in the world, and it's a fantastic orchestra, and I love working with you, and it'll be a highlight for me. And I'm also saying to you, thank you, because this may not exactly have been my idea. I think it was your invitation, in the sense that, when you get to be a soloist with an orchestra, we'd like a Beethoven concerto, which one would you like to play, rather than would you like to do all 5? So I think you were you're instigatory in this process, and I'm absolutely delighted, because one little thing I'd like to add is that with an orchestra, the soloist has the David and Goliath phenomenon. There's 80 people sitting there, and it's just you. Well, in my case, I'm 6'4" and I have a big piano, but even so, people often say, you must be so exhausted after that concerto. And I say, well, yes and no, because when you play a solo recital, as I did at the Tetons last time, a solo recital for piano is about the same amount of music as playing 2 or 3 Beethoven concertos. So, and takes, in some ways, you don't have the synergy and the stimulation and the partnership and all that beautiful sound coming with you. And in a concerto, there are actually moments, 20 or 30 seconds at a time when you don't actually have to play. So, you catch your breath. Whereas in a recital, you're there, the whole arc of any work is yours. So I'm not saying this is easy at all, and there is a stamina issue involved in concentration, but it's, how shall I say, it's not more of a marathon than playing a big solo recital, if that's any comfort.
Mm-hmm. Well, Garrick, I treasure our partnership. I treasure you. I treasure the dialogues and even the fights that we're going to have this summer. And stay well. Stay. Your word, my friend. Stay well. Stay healthy until we meet again in the Grand Tetons. Thank you so much, Garrick.
You're so welcome. I look so incredibly much forward to it.
So on week 2, we stay in the spirit of Beethoven with not just the Leonore Overture No. 3, but also another piece where you might not know the connection between John Adams and Beethoven. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
There is this work that John Adams, in order to celebrate the great symphonies of Beethoven, but also the quartets, he wrote a work called Absolute Jest, which is a work for solo string quartet and orchestra, where John takes various themes from Beethoven and gives them that unique John Adams treatment. We will then welcome the St. Lawrence String Quartet. That is within the context of a program also featuring Marcus Stentz. We're thrilled to welcome Marcus back. Marcus will be conducting in the second part of the program the great ballet Petrushka by Igor Stravinsky. It's kind of Punch and Judy for orchestra. And as you mentioned, the program will begin with this iconic Leonore 3, which basically takes the story of Fidelio, for which it was originally a prelude or an overture, and in a space of 14 minutes tells the entire story. It's a remarkable feat.
Donna, week 3 is an extraordinarily exciting all-Russian program, and we're inviting back an incredible soloist, Augustin Hadelich. Tell me how this program came to be around a soloist such as Augustin.
Bringing Augustin was an absolute must, and he played phenomenal Tchaikovsky a couple of years ago, and he's coming back with Prokofiev with the second violin concerto. And it's basically, we take that work and try to think, well, how do we make an exciting program around that? A work that we had also wanted to bring over the last couple of seasons was this magisterial 10th Symphony of Dmitri Shostakovich, one of my favorites. And it made perfect sense to put these two Russian pieces together. The Shostakovich, some would argue, his finest symphony. We had those two pieces together, and then the question then becomes, with what do we begin the program? As you recall, last year, in a rather historic moment for the festival, the first music to be heard after having been silent for so long was the overture to Glinka's opera Ruslan and Ludmilla. And we felt that since that was for an invited audience, so to speak, it would only be appropriate to bring it back in our full festival, and it made perfect sense then to repeat it in this all-Russian program.
Over the course of the pandemic in 2020 and 2021, one of the most overused words was reimagined. And last summer, we actually ended up reimagining 2 concert formats that really worked. We heard from you that you loved it, and we're keeping it in 2022. And those are opening the season outdoors in downtown Jackson and our new Gateway series, which explores genres and artists adjacent to our core classical music series. I am so pleased to share that we will kick off the 61st season at the Center for the Arts Park with 2 evenings of music outdoors, great for the whole family and our community. First, our free family concert on Sunday, July 3rd, conducted by resident conductor Jerry Ho and hosted by education curator Megan Heinrich. And on Monday, July 4th at 7 p.m., we present Patriotic Pops with Sir Donald Runnicles and vocalist Capathia Jenkins, who wowed us last year. Now on to our 2022 Gateway Series. Opening the first of 4 Thursday night concerts this summer on July 14th is jazz trumpet player Byron Stripling and vocalist Carmen Bradford in a program called Louis Armstrong and the First Ladies of Song. Byron Stripling is a trumpet player that cut his teeth playing lead with the Count Basie Orchestra and has built his career as a consummate performer in the world of symphony pops. And as the title suggests, this is an evening dedicated to the Great American Songbook, all seen through the lens of the great Louis Armstrong and his collaborators. So you'll hear tunes that artists made famous like Billie Holiday to Barbra Streisand to Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, Duke Ellington, and many more. All with the charisma and class of that era, Byron and Carmen will recreate those magic classics. On Thursday, July 21st, we are so excited to present the Grammy-winning singer-songwriter Aoife O'Donovan. Now, Aoife's musicianship is one that transcends genre, from Americana folk to classical chamber music to straight bluegrass. She'll be joined in Walk Festival Hall by an ensemble of top-notch collaborators presenting music from her solo albums, covers, and new works. And you will hear why she's a favorite of artists like Yo-Yo Ma and Chris Thile, and has been a repeated soloist with orchestras like the National Symphony in Washington and the Cincinnati Pops. On Thursday, August 4th, we present Broadway Then and Now with Andy Einhorn and friends. So from the golden age of Broadway to contemporary hits, this performance will feature 4 incredible Broadway soloists supported by a small ensemble from the Festival Orchestra, all curated and hosted from the piano by Mr. Andy Einhorn. You'll hear tunes from Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Lowe, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Kander and Ebb, and of course, a tribute to the great Stephen Sondheim. It'll be an evening you won't forget. And finally, on August 11th, we will present the vocal ensemble Boches 8 from the UK. This ensemble has built an international audience by presenting diverse repertoire from early English and European Renaissance music to traditional folk songs, classic jazz, and pop favorites, always their own arrangement, blended in perfect harmony. This group just happens to be one of Donald Runnicles' very favorites. They're going to present a wide-ranging recital where you'll hear music from the Renaissance to present day, including covers from Van Morrison, Mumford & Sons, and Irving Berlin. Quite an eclectic mix of music, all exquisitely blended in vocal harmony and Walk Festival Hall. So through our outdoor concerts and our Gateway series, there will be something for everyone this summer. So we're back with Donald to talk about week 4, which is another piece that we've been talking about doing for a couple years. It has not worked out, but it's Mahler's Second Symphony with the Grand Teton Music Festival Chorus. Mm-hmm. Donald, this is really exciting that we're doing this year.
It is, Emma, and of course, if it's the Grand Teton Music Festival, it must be a symphony of Gustav Mahler. We've managed over the last 15 years really to cover most of the symphonies, one every year. The welcoming this new chorus, it's not really a new chorus, it's the chorus of the Utah Symphony, but they are very proud to be associated with our festival and will come under a new name. The Second Symphony of Gustav Mahler, gosh, so much to say. Another one of these extraordinary darkness to light, one of these typical Mahlerian existential spiritual, pantheistic journey that you, the audience, but also the orchestra, all the performers find themselves on. And in that sense, it's a work which obviously has its roots perhaps in a Beethoven Ninth Symphony, in that he introducing the chorus in the finale, and this is exactly what Gustav Mahler does. And we are delighted, of course, to welcome, there's a soloist, there are two soloists, our mezzo-soprano and our soprano, besides the chorus. And this will be none other than Heidi Stober. And I actually spoke to Heidi and asked her a little bit about her thoughts about the symphony and about opera and singing symphonic repertoire. So let's have a listen. Heidi, it's wonderful to see you. It's not that long ago since we actually saw one another in person. And one of my personal highlights will indeed be performing the Mahler, the Gustav Mahler, the Second Symphony, and with you as one of our soloists, the soprano soloist. I will never forget when you were with us performing the Fourth Symphony, just where you sat for quite a long time. I would love to hear about just what's going through your mind during that time. But of course, I will never forget the radiance, both of your just vocally, but also just your presence. And then, of course, you finally get to sing like an angel, so to speak. Tell me a little bit about your experience with the Mahler, with the Second Symphony, and
okay, so this will be my first time ever singing.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, so I'm extremely happy to have the chance to finally perform this symphony, the second. Fourth, I've done a number of times and in various places. And it was interesting because after the news of our postponement of Der Zwerg, yeah, of course, I was feeling down about this, and I decided, what do I want to listen to? Mahler's Second Symphony. And just, I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. This, I mean, you know, you've performed it many times, and how the chorus and soprano voice come out of nothing, and then the soprano voice soars out of that. It's, I don't know. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it, and yeah, I can't wait.
Well, we're obviously all thrilled to welcome you back, and please keep coming. If it has anything to do with me, you will keep coming back. Heidi, I was just speaking with Garrick Ohlsson, was talking to Garrick about what is going through his mind in the long orchestral expositions before as a pianist he begins. And is there a different set of disciplines for you as a singing in concert, when, of course, you are used to having like a moat, an orchestra pit in front of you?
Yes, absolutely.
And you're up on stage, and sometimes you're singing at great distances from the actual music. And then there is, of course, the whole timing issue of being with the music. Do you just come with a very different approach, or how is that? I
think the beauty and the gift of getting to do orchestral works is feeling really a part of it with the players. And this isn't, there is, as you said, this moat, and depending how low the pit is for various pieces, depending how many players, and, you know, once in a while, I love when I am further downstage in an opera and I can actually look down and see everyone and feel and look at people's reactions in the pit and watch them as they are doing what they do so incredibly well. And to have that chance in Mahler 4, and then the fact that that was the first time ever when we did this together that I was not at the front. Mm-hmm. And that added a whole nother layer of feeling like this is all of us really together, not here's the soloist. Yes, of course, being next to you is wonderful, but to actually have lived and had that experience living amongst all of these incredible players was it was one of, I've said this to you before, it was one of the most incredible experiences as a musician I've ever been able to have, because there is just a different, for me at least, there was a different connection, camaraderie, and yeah, it's to really feel like we are doing this together was so incredibly special. And so that is the major difference, is the vibrations, feeling that, whether it is standing amongst all of the players or in front, literally the physical vibrations, having that come moving over, swooping over the body is indescribable.
How important do you think it is for opera singers to sing symphonically or orchestrally? That is to say, to sing in a different repertoire. I mean, I know the question I'm often posed is my approach to symphonic repertoire, or is my approach as the conductor of a symphony orchestra any different to conducting opera? And I know my response is always the same. There is absolutely no difference. I mean, there's a physical difference. You just have the orchestra on stage as opposed to in the pit, and singers and choruses. How is it with you? Do you, I'm sorry, the original question was, how important do you think it is? And in which case, why?
I think when we take out the element of being a different character, costumes, wig, makeup, and then we get down to the text. And I think to have that opportunity where you sort of strip everything away, and you're not acting and moving with your body, but you have to use the music and the text to tell a story or to convey something. And there's a much more, I hope it's okay to describe it this way, but a much more naked feeling about this. But then it has to be such a connection to the music, to the text, and there's nothing else that one can hide behind, if that makes sense. For me, I feel a different vulnerability. If I think about the text, for instance, with Mahler 4, this isn't about becoming a different character, becoming a different person, and it's honoring what the words are, what the music is. And yeah, I think there's a different vulnerability, and you cannot hide behind anything, if that makes sense.
I think that makes perfect sense. And I know in conversations with some singers, how nervous some singers are to pick up on your word, so to speak, naked. When you say hide behind, they don't have any character in The Marriage of Figaro to hide behind, that one is no longer hiding in the personality of somebody who is not yourself. It's your voice, but you are playing a role, as you say. You have makeup on, you have some rococo dress on, and you can be a character, and I mean, not exactly naked, but standing up in front of the orchestra, you have none of these physical nor mental nor theatrical props. It's just you. It's the most important part of you, which of course is your gorgeous voice. But all of a sudden, all of those things are taken from you, and what is left is what is ultimately at the core. And I think that's, I think you bring up a very, very good point. And I suppose that I wonder if it's not. Of course, one has to be asked, but I feel it's terribly important. And I think you are so accomplished in your art. I think it's important that opera singers do get a chance to sing symphonically and just sort of take all the other trappings away, and it's the genuine you. And talking about the genuine you, I know for a fact how much all the musicians fell in love with you when you were with us with the Model 4, and I'm sure you must have sensed their support, but you have I keep coming back to this word radiant.
Thank you.
It's, I mean, to experience the radiance of Violetta, or I should say the vocal fireworks of that, and at the same time, you really you don't play it. You are this vulnerable person, and I think it's that vulnerability that you just go straight to the heart of both our musicians and our audience. Heidi, we're thrilled to be welcoming you back to the Grand Teton Music Festival in 2022.
I cannot wait. I am so thrilled to be coming back. I would come and do anything. I'll paint your walls.
You do know that this is going out on the internet, so I can come back to this interview and say, well, you said you would paint the walls.
Absolutely. I have much training from my university days, but no, in all seriousness, it has been the 2 summers, let's see, what was that, 2019 and 2021 were just 2 of the most beautiful, special, fulfilling experiences for me as a musician, as a singer. And it is incredible, the energy, I have never worked somewhere before where I have absolutely the sense that everyone is over the moon to be there and to be making music together. And that isn't to say that there aren't these special moments and experiences at other places, but just this across the board, everyone is in this together and wants to just do something really incredible, moving, special together. It's like nowhere else.
Do you know, I've had this sudden idea. Instead of painting the walls, why don't you come out and spend 8 weeks with us at the Grand Teton Music Festival, and every night you come out in front of the audience and you say just what you've said.
But it's the truth. It really is. And I mean, on both sides of the pond here. And again, you know, obviously, I think the world of somewhere like Deutsche Oper, and this house means so much to me. And I've had such rich experiences there and have grown so much, but there is just something that, and I think until someone has the opportunity to make music at the Grand Teton Music Festival, I think someone else might believe what I'm saying and, oh, that sounds really lovely. Oh, that sounds very special. Great. But until you actually live it, it's, don't you think? I mean, you obviously know, you have been there long and you've done incredible things there, but this is just beyond, I don't know, everyone wants to be there. And you can tell everyone's grateful to be there.
Every time I go back to that festival, we begin again from this point of excitement and camaraderie and just the alchemy that takes place within a few short days is nothing short of miraculous. But I know it has an awful lot to do with this kind of this Peter Pan orchestra syndrome that nobody wants to grow up, in a sense. It's just too special. It's this, and yes, I've been there quite a long time, and it has never ever worn off. Bless you, Heidi. We're so thrilled to have you back, and I can't wait. I can't wait because we don't want to wish our lives away, but we can't wait to welcome you back. And meanwhile, stay safe, stay healthy, and until we make music together again.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Already in the season, we've talked about an all-Russian program. This is an all-French program. We have 2 returning guests, both our guest conductor and our soloist, and also 2 premieres for the festival.
Mm-hmm. Our two returning artists, Fabienne Gabel, who will be conducting our orchestra again, and returning after 4 years, Johannes Moser, a phenomenal cellist who was last heard with us performing an electrifying performance of Shostakovich. And he's returning with a very, very seldom performed work by Lalo, the cello concerto. The other premiere is a work he's also bringing. Fabienne is among other things, a terrific exponent of all things French. And it's the Albert Roussel, a ballet suite from the ballet Bacchus et Ariane, which is an explosive and incredibly exciting and very sensuous work. And the fourth piece needs very little introduction, a work much maligned by the composer himself, Maurice Ravel, the Bolero, a work that was, I mean, he wrote it in a sense as an experiment in rhythm, but without any kind of symphonic development. And nobody was more surprised than he when he realized it was becoming his most popular work. And of course, it's just one of the top 10 in the classical repertoire. And it's really rather funny to think of the work having been disparaged by the composer. And that will bring this French program to a very, very exciting conclusion.
So on week 6, we have the opportunity to have on the podium a rising star internationally as a opera conductor, Eun-Sun Kim, who was just appointed to the San Francisco Opera this fall. And this is a fantastic program of a pairing of two iconic American composers, George Gershwin, featuring An American in Paris, and the John Williams Trumpet Concerto. It also happens to be John Williams' 90th birthday this summer too. I'll throw that in there as well. Paired with the Rachmaninoff First Symphony. Tell me about inviting Eun-Sun. Have you met her yet?
I haven't yet met her. I mean, you know, the traditional ships in the night, conductors don't tend to meet one another too often. Eun-Sun is, as you say, a rising star, and of course, I'm on a personal and professional level excited that the now incumbent music director of the San Francisco Opera, where I spent 18 incredibly wonderful years as music director, will be coming to our festival. She's making a wonderful career. And this symphony, yes, believe it or not, being performed at the Grand Theatre Music Festival for the very first time, the first symphony of Sergei Rachmaninoff. This was Eun-Sun's suggestion. She's very passionate about this work. It's a terrific work, which a premiere that we would all as composers just believe to be a nightmare. It led the composer, Rachmaninoff, to seriously consider giving up music, giving up composing. He plunged into a dark and long depression over it. He emerged, as we all know, and he emerged to write, among other things, the glorious Second Symphony. But this is the very, very first work of the young composer. And the program begins with this rambunctious, wonderful evocation of An American in Paris, George Gershwin, which is the piece needs little introduction, and of course a movie was made of it. And fun fact, the taxi horns you hear in this work were actually brought back by the composer George Gershwin after a vacation in France, brought back to America to be featured in the premiere of the work.
I love the story of George Gershwin. What inspired him to write this piece is going to Paris to take a lesson with Maurice Ravel. And I'm sure you know this famous quote of what Ravel told him after a couple lessons, which is, why would you be a second-rate Ravel when you can be a first-rate Gershwin?
Oh, I hope that's true. It's beautiful, isn't it?
And the John Williams Trumpet Concerto, this is, of course, the premiere of this concerto at the Grand Teton Music Festival, but also the first time that we've performed John Williams music on a festival orchestra program as a concert piece.
Yes.
We have a pretty special soloist on this as well.
He's pretty special. I mean, our entire orchestra is pretty special. And of course, this is for one of our soloists to come out of the ranks of our orchestra is always very meaningful, I think, both for the orchestra and for our audience. This is none other than Tom Hooten, who's now the principal trumpet of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And I spoke to Tom specifically about his relationship with this work and of course, his relationship with the composer, John Williams. Tom, it's good to see you. How many years, in fact, have we been making music together?
Oh my goodness. It's been at least since our days in Atlanta, I believe. That was our first, I remember doing chamber music with you, actually.
That's right. And then, of course, now we are always thrilled to have you in any capacity, quite frankly, at the Grand Teton Music Festival. But this year, in 2022, we'll be featuring you as a soloist in a concerto that is clearly very dear to your heart. Perhaps you'd speak a little bit about, this is the John Williams trumpet concerto, and your experience both with the work, but of course, most importantly, with the composer himself.
Yeah, well, first of all, Donald, thank you so much for the opportunity. And, GTMF is really a summer home, and I try to get there as much as I can. And every week that I spend with you and the family there is really special. And luckily, my wife's going to be there. Jennifer's going to be there for 5 weeks this summer. So it's going to be really special for me to be able to solo with such an amazing group. So this concerto, I recorded this with the composer about 3 years ago, and one of the challenges of playing this piece is to try to bring a sense of, everybody knows this iconic composer so well. And that it's a challenge for, does the listener instantly see John Williams trumpet and think Indiana Jones or Superman or something,
I thought of Star Wars, actually.
Star Wars, right, of course, yeah. And so one of the things I really respect about the Maestro is that, John Williams, is that he's so studied, and if there's so much history compositionally from whether it's Debussy or Mahler or something like that, he really knows his stuff. And the reason I recorded this and the reason I really fell in love with this piece was because I wanted to help showcase a different side of him that maybe people. It makes me keep thinking about this one reference he said. In actually reference to an Indiana Jones film. He and Steven were working on this motorcycle scene, and he wrote this beautiful scherzo that's like fun and bubbly and like driving, and it's great. It's got all these flute, fast passages, and it's just really like a racing scene. It's great. And John went to the premiere and said all you could hear was the motorcycle and dialogue, so he ended up titling this piece Scherzo for Motorcycle and Orchestra, and so he jokes, and I think there's no ill will there, but I think sometimes he wishes that the music could be more to the fore. And of course there's the many layers of film. So this piece, I think, shows a slightly more complex side to him. How does he think about the role of the trumpet? And the cool thing about this piece is it goes from everything from strong fanfares to, once he slightly referenced the idea of what would it sound like for Miles Davis to play this passage. And that kind of hit me really hard, because it was somewhere that I never thought he was thinking when he was writing for the trumpet. And so my challenge in playing this piece, and what I love about it, is how far can I stretch the imagination of where he's come from and myself as an artist to really show all the different layers and possibilities of expression from a trumpet.
Of course, one of the unique sides of being the soloist in this sort of work is that you can genuinely have a dialogue with the composer, because the composer is alive.
Right.
And I wonder, obviously, Mike Sachs, principal in Cleveland, is a good friend, and we both know him well. And revere the guy. Do you sense in this concerto that Mike, in dialogue with John Williams, talked about specific aspects of Mike's act? You know, how was John Williams familiar with Mike, or do you think that this is more? This is just an incredibly accomplished work for anybody, any trumpeter who takes it on.
It's a really interesting question, and I haven't dug into that specifically. I will say that I'll go on a limb and say I don't know if this is written in a way that's like tailored to Mike's sax. I mean, Mike is, like you said, an accomplished, really amazing, beautiful, varied musician that can, you know, do all these different expressive things. I wonder if their conversations were more around how can we make this most effective for what he was going for. But I will say that, and I think this is on purpose, that I poked John, you know, I was like, can you give me some ideas? What were you thinking? What was the inspiration? And it really came down to a few small things. And I wonder if he, you know, I don't know if he doesn't want to write the script for it, or if he doesn't want to pigeonhole it in any way. I have that feeling of like, which I wasn't expecting to get from him in this process of recording this and learning this piece, was this is more of a blank slate in terms of what's possible, rather than this is how I want it to go, or like look to this artist because I wrote it for that. I don't get that sense, and in a way it was scary, because it's like, oh my gosh, all of this is the responsibility of me this time, or when Mike plays it, it's all on him or whoever. I think that's cool. I think that's exciting.
I think one salient observation, if I may make, that is that the fact that you are soloist is a testament just how, and I say this in all immodesty, or in all modesty, how great the orchestra is, the Grand Teton Music Festival. It's whether it's a Rolls Royce or it's this remarkable group of phenomenal musicians. Is there, and of course it's wonderful for our audience, because our audience does develop over the years, and I'm quite sure you have a relationship with quite a few of our patrons. Is there an additional level of stress, or an additional level of concentration or nervosity when you're actually the soloist with your colleagues, with your friends, when you know that those behind you are all people? Of course, I'm sure you feel their support and their love, but is there less or more stress?
Well, I think it's more, and one of the parts of context that I don't think people realize as a trumpet player that comes to the front, is that most of the time the orchestra's in front of me. I don't get the full sonic, you know, experience of what 80 to 100 people sounds like. So, you know, when you get up to the front and you feel this massive, and for this concerto, it's a big orchestra. Each section has like solely 2D sections. John really makes it an immersive experience with the soloist. And maybe in that sense, going back to your other question, it's interesting that he's writing this for Mike sax 20 years ago, 22 years ago. Mike obviously being not a full-time soloist, but a full-time orchestra musician, and how the orchestra and the musicians interact. There's a whole section where the soloist and the trumpet section interact from front to back. So I think in that sense it's beautiful. I wouldn't say it's stressful, but I think in general, when a person from the back of the orchestra comes to the front, it can be kind of an unnerving experience at first, a little stressful, but ultimately really gratifying to connect with the orchestra in a different spot and just experience new sounds and that kind of thing.
Well, you most certainly are unlikely to be told to drag, or perhaps you will be, because, you know, sitting so far away normally from the conductor, you must have to be factoring in just how you react to a beat, and all of a sudden you're in the conductor's lap, so to speak. And
Yeah.
is that just it's like getting into a new car, and
Yeah.
you somehow have intuitive reactions to accelerators and brakes. Is there something there when you're standing
Oh my
up at the front?
goodness. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, as a trumpet player, we do this. I tell my students this exercise. I want you to sit in your chair in the orchestra, put a metronome and a recorder on the podium, and your job is to play with the metronome from 40 feet away. And so you develop this idea of how do I project the sound and make sure that my timing hits the podium with the first violins. But then the reverse is also true, is that the people in the front desk, the violins and all the strings, they know that there's a delay, so they tend to have a delay. So absolutely, I've never heard a conductor actually talk about this. So it's a testament to your awareness of our roles and our sort of learned kind of responses. Absolutely, for me as a principal, sitting up at the front, I have to add a degree of chill, of don't play right at the front of the beat. In a sense, breathe, kind of settle, and where's that center spot where I'm really, working with the brass and working with the front desk.
I think you've just coined a new musical term, degree of chill. You did say chill, didn't you?
Yeah.
A degree of chill. Well, Tom, it's wonderful to see you, albeit virtually.
Yeah.
All the very best, and we are thrilled and very proud to be featuring you in the concerto in the summer season of the Grand Teton Music Festival. Cannot wait. All the best, Tom. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Donald. Can't wait to see you.
So as much as we all love the sound of a full orchestra in Walk Festival Hall, some of the most magical moments in that space can happen with smaller, more intimate music and ensembles in chamber music and recital music. This summer, we will present a 7-concert chamber music series on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., just an hour earlier than in the past. These programs are curated by Adele Runnicles and forged from suggestions from the festival orchestra musicians. As the scheduling for our busy 220 musicians of the festival orchestra scattered across the country just settled this month, we'll now set forth with programming the series. So stay tuned for more complete information on those programs in April. But I can give you a scoop that we will be premiering a new work for brass and percussion by the great trumpeter and composer Wynton Marsalis, which is being co-commissioned by GTMF. So this summer, we are also launching a new 3-concert Sunday afternoon piano recital series showcasing virtuosic artists in a casual and restorative Sunday afternoon setting. So the idea is you can get up, get your hike in, have a lunch, head to Walk Festival Hall for a recital by an incredible pianist, and then you're home in time for dinner before sunset. Joining us on the series this year is Israeli-American pianist Inan Bartanen, who's performing a program based on Beethoven's piano works. The dynamic Joyce Yang presenting a recital exploring Rachmaninoff. And on August 7th, we're presenting the gold medalists of the 2022 Van Cliburn competition, who will be announced in mid-June. These intimate recitals are a special opportunity to hear performances at the highest levels of virtuosity and for you to be home by dark, which is something we all value in Jackson. So we think you will love our Sunday matinee piano recital series. On this season, we've planned an evening of Russian music, of all French and music, and now a program of all German music. Brahms' First Symphony paired with the Schumann Piano Concerto, and a new work by a composer that you know well. Tell us about your relationship with Detlef Glanert.
Detlef Glanert, I think, is one of the most important voices from contemporary Germany. That is to say, he's a living composer, obviously. and we've become very good friends. And he writes music regularly for the big international orchestras. I mean, Boston, the Concertgebouw, and his music is embraced by many of the big orchestras simply because it's really, really good. I have a quote here actually that about his music, where it describes Detlef Glannert. His music, he displays, I quote, "an affinity with the romantic tradition newly explored from a contemporary point of view." I've worked with Detlef on symphonic repertoire. He recently wrote an opera for the Deutsche Oper called Oceane, which received its world premiere there a couple of seasons ago. And this work is Idyllium, basically. This was a work that will be given its US premiere at the Grand Teton Music Festival. It's a beautiful, very, very serene work, and was designed as an introduction to a Brahms symphony, which made it just perfect to bring this work. And I would like to feature Detlef certainly in future seasons, and I look forward to the audience getting to know him more. On the same program is, yes, another German work, the Schumann Piano Concerto, with Ingrid Flutter, just a wonderful, wonderful pianist. The Schumann Concerto, like the symphony in some ways, needs no introduction. The concerto very much inspired by and supported by his wife Clara Schumann, who was herself an outstanding pianist, who actually gave the world premiere with her husband in 1845.
We are ending this season in a pretty spectacular way. When I first started here 18 months ago, Donald, you brought up this dream, this idea. As I continued to get to know the organization, I actually found files where you had proposed us presenting La Bohème in concert, semi-stage, back as far as 2014. So this has been a long time coming, and it's really exciting. It's happening. Tell us about how we're doing this, a concert opera, semi-stage in Walk Festival Hall.
It was indeed a dream, an aspiration in some ways, quite a few seasons back. Of course, one of the other hats I wear, a rather large hat indeed, is in opera around the world. And I've always been eager to not only bring great vocal soloists to the Tetons, but also one day perhaps to put on an opera. So here we are in 2022 for the very first time, bringing an opera in its almost in its entirety. And I mean by that we're not in a position to feature the chorus in this opera, which is why we've hit upon a scenario whereby in the first half of the program, we will bring selected highlights from the first two acts, and we'll present this a little like previously in La Bohème. And then there's intermission, and in the second part of the program, we will feature Acts 3 and Act 4 in their glorious entirety to transport our audience to, yes, Christmas Eve in Paris. And we've assembled a terrific lineup of singers. And I'm personally very proud of the fact that this will finally come to fruition. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful for a number of our benefactors, a number of our board members, past board members, or who have been hugely generous in putting on this, in facilitating this. I'm profoundly grateful to those who have made this work. People will look back this year as this watershed moment where it all began operatically in 2022. And I believe that this will be very much a new pillar of this festival, this 8th week being reinstated, this 8th week very much being devoted each time to an operatic work, and that with that, the Grand Teton Music Festival will become also this destination for operatic audiences.
We are so excited about this and could think of no better way to cap off an extraordinary season. We're so excited. But now it's time for you to enjoy some of what Jackson Hole has to offer in the winter. So I'm going to let you go. And
Off to the slopes.
Yes, Alpine or Nordic today?
I think it's going to be a cross-country day.
Good. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward to this, and thanks again.
Thank you, Emma, for being such a gracious host.
All right, so that is a wrap on our 2022 season. It has been so special to have you all here and for you to have an opportunity to hear from Donald, Garrick, Heidi, and Tom. Thanks to all of them, and thank you for joining us tonight. Subscriptions for this season go on sale starting next week on Tuesday, January 25th, and single tickets go on sale in early April. For further information about purchasing subscriptions, click the link in the chat below or head to our website at gtmf.org. Our full brochure will hit your mailbox early next week. Don't forget, subscribe early for your favorite seats. Thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you soon for our 61st festival season and for the world's finest music making back in Jackson Hole. From all of us at the Music Festival, stay healthy and see you in a few months.